Welcome to the I Am One podcast, where we talk to perinatal mental health advocates, professionals, and educators supporting the mission of Postpartum Support International. We're not afraid to ask our guests about the hardest parts of pregnancy and postpartum because we know that PSI has tools and resources to help in every situation, and everyone should know about them.
Whether you are among the 1 in 5 moms, 1 in 10 dads, one of many trans or non-binary parents, or you're one professional or advocate committed to helping folks in need, you are also one of us.
I'm your host, Danny Giddens, and I am 1 in 5. I didn't know what to call what I was experiencing after becoming a parent and felt too scared at the time to speak up.
Not anymore. Now she won't stop talking about it. Hi, I'm your co-host, Emily Jankowski. I'm also 1 in 5, and I want you to know that mental health complications are common, but they aren't normal.
There's something powerful in knowing I am one of many. Whether you're already connected to the perinatal mental health world, looking for new ways to support parents and families, or just want to hang out with us in your earbuds, we are so glad that you tuned in.
Of course they want to hang out with us. We're lovely. Seriously though, the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this pod are the speaker's own. Tuning into this podcast is, spoiler alert, not a replacement for therapy, but PSI can help you find a therapist. We could also help you find a psychiatrist, a support group, or Waldo.
Emily, Waldo? Come on! We don't know where Waldo is.
Okay, fine. PSI help seekers can find peer support and resources in their area.
At PSI, we want you to know you are not alone, you are not to blame, and with help, you will be well. On today's episode, we're sitting down with the one, the only Lisette Lopez-Rose, Assistant Manager of Support Groups here at PSI, and an outspoken perinatal mental health advocate for Latino parents everywhere. We'll chat about being surprised by postpartum rage and intrusive thoughts, difficulty getting in with a provider, and setting a record for attendance at PSI Support Groups in a single week. Seriously, you can attend as many as you need. So without any further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode with our friend Lisette. Lisette, welcome to the studio, friend. We're so excited to have you here. Emily and I were so pumped when we got your email saying that you were interested in being a guest on the pod, and I feel like I couldn't reply to your email fast enough. So we're very thankful that you were interested in sharing your story and that you're here today, and we get to hang out with you for an hour to chat about like feelings and stuff. So and all the things perinatal mental health. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And I'm super pumped and excited to be here with you and Emily because I feel like, yeah, we're going to talk about feelings, right? But also there's a lightheartedness. Talking about feelings doesn't have to be so heavy.
Yeah. Well, if you don't mind, Lisette, could you give all of our listeners a little bit of an introduction to who you are?
So professionally, I am the PSI Support Groups Program Assistant Manager. So like any of the support groups, I help, manage and kind of with the volunteers, all the administrative stuff kind of related to that. And I am also in the San Francisco Bay Area. So I'm in California on the West Coast.
Oh,
Bay Area girl.
West Coast.
Yeah. And I have a 3-year-old daughter. I'm married. I have a husband. And I really call myself a pandemic first-time mom because I was pregnant March of 2020. The world shut down. COVID is the complete backdrop to my experience as, hello, parenthood, like, surprise. And so like that really impacted my overall transition to parenthood and even pregnancy because it was my first pregnancy too. But yeah, so that's a little bit about me.
I assume you're here to talk about perinatal mental health feelings. So can you tell us how perinatal mood and anxiety disorders have impacted your life? But first, what is the newest support group right now?
So the newest support group is the ADHD support for perinatal moms and birthing people.
This question will be different in a month, in another month, in another month. Like you guys are doing so much good work. Anyway, tell us about your mental health stuff.
Yeah. So of course, like the whole pandemic just hit me like a freaking, bag of bricks or a freight train just smacking me. I thought I knew what postpartum depression was, like, prior to that. So, like, I'm the youngest of 5 girls. All my sisters have children. So, I thought I knew what I was, like, getting into, but I really had no clue. And then, obviously, that element of COVID and isolation was very different. Plus, we moved and bought a home when I was pregnant. That was a whole additional layer on top of that. So, like, when we talk about the risk factors, I'm like, "Yep, check, check, check." When I saw that for the first time.
Any added financial stress? You bet.
Lots of life changes. Were you newly pregnant when everything kind of shut down in March of 2020? Were you towards the end of pregnancy?
I literally found out like 2 days before,
Oh,
San Francisco shut down.
great. No.
So I was like, "Oh, that's how it's gonna be. Oh my god." When I look back on my experience, I'm like, "Okay, I really was going through some stuff during pregnancy, but I really didn't see it, and I didn't, have the education or knowledge about it." When I actually did reach out for help, I was struggling for 6 months. I had a crazy, crazy work schedule. Like, I worked in administrative work where I had to commute an hour in. The hours were like 12-hour days plus commuting, so it was more like I was gone for like 14 hours. That definitely,
Good googly
on top of the
moogly.
sleep deprivation, was just a lot, right? When I look at it, I'm like, "Ha, you're crazy." I wish I knew, like, how much time and adjustment it really is to have, a new baby, to become a parent, and just how much support you need to have in place before that happens, or finding ways to find support. I was kind of struggling and just having intrusive thoughts. For me, like, anger was a huge thing. Like, I was pissed all the time.
Like ragey.
Yeah, ragey,
Ah.
and I call it my Hulk rage, because if you're like a
Oh,
a
Hulk rage.
character, yeah, like, that's like Hulk smash. That was me. Like, I was ready
Mhm.
to break things and just, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And I didn't know that that was postpartum depression. I didn't know that was a symptom. I thought it was just me crying in the corner, but I'm like, "I'm not crying, like, I'm sleep deprived, I'm exhausted, but I'm also just angry," and I had no idea. And then, like, early on postpartum, I definitely had, like, a bunch of intrusive thoughts that I was like, "What the heck?" But then I was also kinda scared to share, like, what they were,
Yeah.
because I didn't know, like, 1 is during the pandemic, there's so much uncertainty out there. 2,
Mhm.
I'm a mom of color. I don't know if people are gonna take that as, "I need to take your baby away," like, if you're experiencing
Mm.
thoughts. But then also, like, I had support from my family, but I was like, "Are
Mhm.
they gonna think I'm a bad mother if I'm having these thoughts?"
Yeah.
Because I was already kind of feeling like not a good mother, because I was having breastfeeding challenges. I wasn't making enough milk, and so, like, that whole feeding challenges complication on top of those intrusive thoughts made me really feel inadequate as a mom.
Yeah.
There must be something wrong with me, like, I'm not a
Mhm.
good mom, as opposed to, there's something mentally going on with me, yeah, but I didn't see that difference back then.
Yeah. Like our sleep deprived brain, exhausted brain does a really good job of telling ourselves stories about what's real. But spoiler alert, you weren't a bad mom. You weren't a terrible person. Stuff was going on for you. It's not like you asked for these intrusive thoughts to come flying into your brain, you
Yeah.
know?
Intrusive thoughts are so different for everyone. And I don't necessarily want to dig into like the scary details of
Well,
what they were, but were they of a nature where you were afraid for the baby? Were you afraid for yourself? Did you feel like you needed to be hyper vigilant? I feel like there's so many different ways that that shows up for people. Can you tell us just a little
Yeah.
bit about that?
Yeah, so for me, at first it was, because like, everybody's concerned with a newborn and SIDS. Mine
mm,
was first just worried about that being an issue, and those thoughts
mm,
being like, "Is the
Mhm.
baby sleeping okay? Is the baby breathing?"
okay.
Related to that at first, and then it was just, like, really random, like, scenarios in the house where I was scared for the baby's well-being, or, like, a thought would cross my mind, and then I'd be like, "Oh my god, like, why did I have that thought?"
Right.
And then I slowly started to try to, like, do something to make those thoughts not true.
Like preventing them from being real,
Yes.
even though they already weren't real.
Yeah, exactly. So even though, like, I was having these thoughts around my child being harmed in some way, shape, or form, it was like, "Okay, I'm gonna hold you now, and nothing can
Mhm.
get you." Almost like my mama
Mhm.
bear instinct, where it's like,
Yeah.
"Nothing's gonna get to you." Or, "Okay, I'm having thoughts about you getting sick, so now I'm going to do something to prevent you from getting sick. So maybe I'll over sterilize the baby supplies,
Oh,
or, like, make sure that I'm washing the baby supplies." There was just those kinds of things that I didn't realize were compulsions. I didn't realize those were symptoms of OCD.
And that's when they talk about like because we all have different levels of symptoms around like, I don't know, wanting to do the best we can as a parent. Like there's a really fine line, and it's a little different for everybody, where it goes from I'm just doing the best I can to this is getting in the way. And so what you're saying is like you felt like you had to hold the baby, or you felt like there was one way that things could be sterilized. And that's the kind of thing we're talking, like when we're like, it's getting in the way, like
nobody else is able to help.
Which then meant you had to do it all. No wonder you had some rage. You felt like you had to do everything.
Yeah.
Relatable.
And I'm glad that you bring up that distinction, Emily. Impacting your normal everyday function is something that I wish I would have known. As far as like my providers were kind of dismissive, like this is how it is and it's COVID. So you have limited support. So yeah, of course you're sleep deprived, or of course you're having difficulty with feeding challenges. That's just how it is. And so it really wasn't like, is this affecting you every day? Like, are you really not being able to rest? Or are you really not finding time to rest or can't rest? There was no like kind of pulling that distinction out.
Yeah. They're trying to normalize something that's common, but not normal, right?
Sometimes it's just hard to know, like, how hard does it have to feel before it's okay for me to ask for some help? For me, it was like, I kind of had to get into emergency mode. Not an emergency, but like it felt like it had to be really bad. And it doesn't. You don't have to wait. You can talk about how things are going for you like early on. But I didn't hear a lot of people talking about it. Lisette, you didn't know, if it was okay to like bring it up in conversation, and it's hard to know when to talk about it. So
Yeah. And I think something that you just said, Danny, just really made me think about how things feel like they have to get to like emergency room status, right? Like where you're being committed or something like that, where it's like, oh yeah, you are suffering from mental health. You need help. And kind of figuring out like, we need to do a better job of screening, number one. And number two, realizing that there is no more worst case scenario than the other, right? Like if we're suffering from mental health, just get the help that is needed. And really, the person should feel comfortable asking for help. And I think that's where we like really suck as a society about it. And I can go on my whole soapbox about that, but
we will clap when you do.
Yeah, we will.
But like in terms of screening, that was one of the things, like I was not screened for mental health. So it's like, well, geez, no wonder I was suffering and not realizing. But the more that I've been an advocate out there, the more that I've been involved with PSI, like I've also heard from others, I was screened, but I wasn't talked to about what was on the screening or what my answers were on the screen.
I was just thinking about that, because you could screen somebody, but there's a difference between just asking the questions and also kind of like educating and saying, you know what, it's actually like really common. Like, how are you feeling emotionally? It's really common at this stage postpartum. You might start to feel, insert whatever.
Right.
I hear that from a lot of new parents. Like, just keep that on your radar. So like it almost like leaves the door open to just for somebody to kind of go, yeah, I actually kind of did feel that, instead of just reading a question, or giving somebody a piece of paper to fill out in the waiting room.
And then there's like a duty after that, once that paper has been filled out, to do something with that information, right? The provider of whatever variety should be having a conversation with you.
Yeah.
With all of us. Yeah.
It's so frustrating that we either see, for example, extreme cases in the media, right? Like they're calling it postpartum depression, but it's really psychosis. I didn't understand the difference of that until I went to PSI Support Groups, and I was like, oh, I had no idea there was more than just postpartum depression. And everybody calls it the postpartum, right? Whenever people are talking
I
about
got the
mental health.
postpartum.
Yeah,
You
right.
know?
Yeah, that's exactly like, and there's so many times where I still hear that I'm just like, it's 2024, right? It is, right? Yeah.
It is.
Okay.
Yeah. Hang on just a
I'm
second.
like,
Listen, time is a social construct, okay?
I know, but I'm like, it's 2024. Like, how are we still not, as a society, being able to talk about mental health and really with parents. I feel like there's just so much taboo with parents. And then, of course, obviously, there's even more taboo with different cultural backgrounds or religious values and all
Like
that.
in terms of what is acceptable in those cultures to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What was the next step after? Because you said you felt like not yourself. You didn't feel good for several months. And then you finally, let's say, reach out. What did that look like?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was 6 months postpartum and I was just really struggling. I was having a panic attack at work and I was like, I need to leave. And because of that, I called my husband and I was like, something's wrong. Nothing's getting better. Something's wrong with my mental health. Every time I've talked into the doctors, like whether it was pediatricians or whatever, like nobody's helping me. So like I need to call and get help. And so I called my provider and reached out for help. But
Wow,
then, of
Lisette.
course, it's like, I feel like that was the first step and kind of like, Danny, how you just exhaled, right? Where it should feel like, a burden is lifted off my shoulders. It really wasn't. Like, that was just the beginning of my struggle. As I contacted them, they were like, okay, well, we don't have anything for an appointment for a week. So you have to wait a week to talk to someone.
Come on, guys.
I was like, I will, do my best. And they were like, unless you're, trying to harm yourself or someone else in the home, go to the ER. But, you're going to have to wait for this appointment. So I was like, okay. As that week went by, I was just like, oh my God, I'm not going to make it. I'm not like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not feeling like I'm, sick enough mentally where I need to go to the ER and get myself committed. But I'm just struggling
And
so
the
hard.
consequences of that. Like you've already said, as a woman of color, you're worried about what's going to happen when you say things, right?
Exactly. Like I didn't know how these people were going to react to that. So as I was like waiting for this appointment, I happened to like be on Instagram in the middle of the night, searched for postpartum support. And that's how I found PSI. And I was like, wait, is this real? Like, cause it has the word international in it. So I was like, wait, is this real? Like, is it not like a fake website or like, is it really for me? Cause I'm in the US. And so as I like started to look at it and research it, I was like, oh my God, why am I not in these groups? Why do I not have this information? And so I immediately like signed up for a support group, went to my first support group, and then just so much made sense in that first group. And then I finally had the therapy appointment and it was actually an intake appointment. So it was like, we're going to do an intake appointment for psychiatric services, but I'm not your therapist. I just need to know what's going on or whatever. And then we're going to refer you to someone to see for therapy.
It's the step before the step. Come on, guys. Like,
yes, exactly. The thing is, like, they had, because of COVID, and I think this is in general, but also the healthcare system that I'm in, it was a third party place that they were referring out for therapy. And so they had told me like, okay, you're going to be going to this other company. They're going to be doing your therapy services, but they don't have anything until 5 weeks from now. So that's the first appointment that you can have. And then also, by the way, that referral company doesn't have postpartum depression as a diagnosis code. So we're just going to mark it as major depressive disorder. And I was like, okay.
What?
Yeah. So like there was already so many things related to that, which was just a mess. And then finally, the weeks are passing by, ticking by. I'm struggling. I'm like, I don't know what to do. I kept going to support groups, but I just had to keep being patient, right? Like I still had to keep being patient. And every time I was told like, if you're going to, harm yourself or you're feeling like it's really, really bad, go to the ER. And at that point, I'm just like, well, what am I going to do? Go to the ER and they're not going to treat me like I have a broken leg. They're just going to be like, okay, we refer you to therapy. Like I really didn't see the value of going to the ER if I wasn't having major delusions or hallucinations. Like I just didn't see the value in that. So that's why I was like, I'm just going to keep sticking it out, waiting, finally do. And the person doesn't show up for therapy.
What?
And I completely lose it.
Of course you did. Can I just say that? Of course you did.
Yeah. So of course, like, I broke down. I called the psychiatry department that I was scheduled for, explained to them what happened. They were, like, I'm so sorry this happened to you. We don't have anything. Like, if you come to us, we're going to see you as an emergency, but then we're going to release you because you're not really, experiencing severe symptoms. And so it was just kind of like the same thing, right? Like either I go to the ER and try to get seen, but I'm really not going to get seen, or I try something else. At that point, the doctor said, why don't you try seeing your primary care physician? Because since you're past 6 months postpartum, your OBGYN won't see you and won't prescribe you medication. So go to your primary care physician, talk to them and see if they can help you with some medication, because we can't even prescribe medication for you because we're therapists, we're not psychiatrists. So I did that. And then like that was the first time in all of that time that I felt like I was finally like heard and listened to and validated. And my primary care doctor, she was amazing. She was like, let's get you some medication. I'm so sorry. And, you know, she was just like very open and listening to my grievance and everything. And so I had told her, like, I can't wait to be rescheduled with another person. I'm going to see my own therapist. And because I've been going to PSI Support Groups, I can find someone who's trained in perinatal mental health who will get it and understand what I'm going through, and someone who's in my area. And I'm not going to wait anymore. So I found my own therapist and she was like, okay. And so my primary care physician was checking in with me. The person I called for therapy, they got me in within like 2-3 days or something.
That is service.
Exactly.
Holy smokes.
And it really should be like that. It should really be like that. It shouldn't be so many like hoops and jumps that you have to go through. It's just ridiculous, especially when it comes to like health insurance.
Because the messaging to you, like so much of the messaging that you got, I'm just thinking about this, like it blows my mind, because they over and over and over again, it was like, you have to be in a crisis in order to get help. Otherwise, please get in line. And it's like the cartoon line of like, you know, like a Far Side cartoon with there's just people in a line forever.
For miles.
Right? Like that's what it feels like. And they're like, well, you can go, but it has to be an emergency. Thanks for planting that seed, by the way. Like, why would you?
Not true, people.
Right.
Well, it shouldn't be like that anyway.
And that was like one of the things that when I had talked to the therapist that I actually had found, it was just so nice to hear, like, you shouldn't have to wait till it gets that extreme, number one. And number two, just because you're going through something now doesn't mean that it's going to get that extreme. So that's something to like really understand. Like what I was saying, like when Danny was like exhaling, I wish that was part of my story, but it really wasn't the end of it. And it was such a battle because I found my own therapist. That's a whole nother discussion about getting them to pay for this new therapist that I found, which
I was curious about that. Like, did you have to do out of pocket basically just to get in?
Yeah. So I did it, and it was honestly worth it. But I also fought my health insurance to get them to pay for it. And they did, because I was very like advocating for myself. And I think that's the sucky thing. It's like my therapist has always said, like, you're so resilient. You will fight even in the face of adversity or in the face of challenges. You got that fighter mode in you and you're resilient
to know what's right.
Yeah, but I'm like, I wish I wasn't, because it's like, can you imagine if I wasn't that much of a fighter and I really like all those roadblocks, if I let them just kind of stop me, I could have been in the ER or something worse could have happened.
Or you might have just suffered at the same level in silence for months or years before finally being able to get in to see somebody. Like, is that their goal here? Come on.
Yeah, exactly. When I had called and they offered me to see my primary care physician, that was my lowest point. I was on the floor crying, like, I don't want to be here anymore. I can't do this anymore. Those kinds of like suicidal thoughts. I didn't have a plan, which quote unquote didn't make me in crisis. Based on their criteria, I wasn't crisis.
It feels like a crisis, okay? Like what?
Yeah, exactly. And so it was just a huge struggle that I went through, actually like being like, you know what, I need help. And then, okay, here's the circus of things that you have to kind of balance and juggle. And it's just not fair. It's not right. And that's why I'm like, even though I'm a woman of color, I would consider myself like middle income class. You know, in the Bay Area, it's expensive, but we own a home. I'm fortunate enough. And I have private health insurance through an employer. But it's like, even with all of those benefits that I have, I was still facing so many forces that were like against me. I can only imagine what it's like for folks that are having like Medi-Cal or federal government insurance as opposed to like private insurance. But yeah, so that's kind of what I experienced, what I went through, and kind of why I've turned everything that I've gone through into such a passion, which is also healing to me, like to really be like, I'm going to make some changes because I went through this crud and I'm going to change it so no one else has to. But then also like I get to help parents, and that's all part of my passion. And that's kind of like how I got involved with PSI as an employee. First, I was volunteering, then I became an employee, which was amazing because I was like, what? I get to work. I was thinking that PSI was like Beyonce. I was like, I get to work for Beyonce. Like that's how it felt.
Relatable.
That's how I felt when I got my email address. I was like, I need to sit down. This is very exciting.
Yeah. Exactly. And so like now it's funny when you like have certain people be like, oh my gosh, I know you from PSI's website, or like, oh, you work for PSI, right? And you're like, yeah, I do, right?
Pretty lucky.
Yeah, but it's like, it's obviously like, that's not why I do it. It's just how amazing is it that PSI exists to where we can do those things and really make a difference.
Yeah, what you're really reflecting is like how much we all go through. And then we want to fix everything. We realize this is a way to fix some of the things, is to volunteer at PSI, is to get a job here, whatever. That's the joy, is like having a space where you can like make a real difference.
So were you a volunteer in the support groups?
Yeah. So first I started with a support group. So I launched the Latinx support group that PSI offers.
Nice.
So that is one of my babies that I birthed.
Oh, nice.
Wasn't my idea, but like I helped birth it, And I still actually do that group once a month. So that's nice. And then there was a position open. And so that's kind of how I like applied, got interviewed.
You're like, I'm going to click apply now.
Yeah.
I want that.
I also still volunteer with PSI, which everybody's like, you volunteer where you work? Like that doesn't make sense. But I'm like, if you went through the things that I went through, and if you really saw like how rewarding it is to give that back, you'd understand. I'm not a support coordinator anymore in my local area, but I was like, and I was offering support to people in my area. And then also I'm currently on the board for my California PSI chapter. So I do that.
Great.
I'm actually the peer support chair.
I was going to say, what's your role? Okay, cool.
Peer support chair and the PSI liaison. I hold both of those positions. But yeah, so like just getting involved in that sense has also been part of like my healing journey too.
So what does the peer support chair role look like? How long have you been in it? Because I don't want to put you on the spot if you like just got in there and you're like, well, I've just started, right? Do you already have a sense of what that's going to do? Or are you like creating what you plan to do with that role?
A little bit of both. So I've been in the role since April of last year. So it'll be almost a year now. And I really started to get like ideas and things going around October of last year. But what I am hoping to do with this chair position and committee, because it's a committee that I'm working with, is to kind of bridge a gap for perinatal services, peer support services, basically in California. So like figuring out what's out there, number one, where do we need to like possibly get some peer support services out there, and how can we do it? I'm so excited about it because I've mentioned like volunteering is so important to me. I love it, but I also feel like peer support can really be a job. It really is a job. Having lived experience should be a job. And I found out that my state has a peer support certification test so that you can become a peer support specialist. And it's not just for like perinatal mental health. It's also for like substance use disorders or just any kind of like lived experience roles. And so there was like an organization that was giving free training. I did it. I'm going to take the test soon, hopefully, like in May. I want this to be a job. Support groups and peer support can be a job. And there's obviously a need for it. And it's through Medi-Cal. So if people don't have insurance and they have, the California Medi-Cal or, whatever it's called in Medicare, I think in other states, they don't have to pay our facilitators for peer support. So like, that's what I'm thinking of, either peer support groups or like one-on-one mentorship, just so many things that we can do with that. Because I personally experienced, like I left the field, the workforce, because of my mental health. And I had to really like focus and get myself right. There's so many other moms and parents and, dads too, that leave the workforce because they're going through something. or just childcare is so expensive in California. It's so expensive. And so because of that, I'm just like, they could do this as like a part-time job. It gives them, 1, an identity, 2, they help people, but then also they get paid. And so that's kind of like all the stuff. Like I have big goals, y'all. I have big
Yeah.
goals and dreams,
I just got,
and
I
I'm
got
going to the
goosebumps,
sky.
Lisette.
Like
I got
nothing's gonna
goosebumps over here.
so like nothing's gonna stop me in terms of like what I'm gonna do and achieve, and I will do my best
Yeah.
to get that. But there's just I'm just like such a visionary in that sense about peer support. And I'm just so passionate about it, you know? Sorry, I know I went
Yeah.
on a tangent.
No.
It was a great tangent.
That's what we're here for.
5 stars. Highly
Yeah.
recommend your tangent.
Yes. Is there anything else, Lisette, that we haven't touched on that you'd like to touch on?
Yes. So one of the things that I kind of realized in my journey is birth trauma. And I, for the longest time, was like, I'm not a birth trauma survivor. I didn't have a C-section. I gave birth vaginally. There's no way that I'm, a birth trauma survivor. As I've learned, even in our support groups, that birth trauma is really like trauma is in the eye of the beholder, right? So something that's traumatic to you may not be traumatic to me, and vice versa, right? Each person's perception of trauma is different. And so as I like processed in therapy and learned, even though I had a vaginal delivery with my child, I still experienced birth trauma because things were done to my body without consent. And I'm also a child sexual abuse survivor. And so that's also related to my experience and why it was traumatic to me.
Absolutely. Twice over, you didn't have agency over your own body.
Yes, yes, exactly. That I also wanted to share in this podcast episode because I know I'm not the only, childhood sexual abuse survivor out there. And I'm also not the only birth trauma survivor who had a vaginal delivery because there are times where we hear about traumatic C-sections or, certain procedures happening and then there are trying to do life-saving measures, right? And so you're like, well, between those two, like which one has more weight in the sense of like who's more traumatic, right? And I think that that's something too that just realizing that I want other people to know like that's traumatic. Having a C-section is traumatic. But also if you had a vaginal delivery and you felt like it was traumatic and just validating that. And so that's all I wanted to share is about that.
I totally agree. And you know what? I didn't either think that my birth was traumatic, even though it was a C-section, because it wasn't an emergency. Like it wasn't like we needed to rush because anyone was really in danger. It was like, well, I guess this is where we're headed now, right? I also had that like narrative that it needed to be, I don't know, some sort of very Grey's Anatomy kind of feeling moment in order for it to be traumatic. I did not have agency over my body.
Is there a support group for birth trauma?
There is for birth trauma, yes.
Interesting. I just took a stab at it. I figured that there is over 50 support groups or something like that.
There's
something wild like that. I forget.
36 different types of groups.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
But there's probably 50 groups that meet on some given rotation. That I bet is where you're getting that number from.
I saw something anyway, there are so many groups, specialized groups.
Yes.
So there's something for everybody. And if somebody doesn't see a group that they want to see, can they contact the support groups and suggest it somehow?
Well, we have a feedback survey that when people attend our support group, if they have any ideas, they can absolutely put it in the feedback survey because that's really how we got our lost groups. We've expanded them even further down because of those suggestions. We want to start the groups that people need, but we also need people to run those groups. We can always fill out an application too. We'll kind of figure out is it a group that we can start now or is it one that we can wait till later? Or is there something that we can put you in now while we start that group later?
I have a follow-up question about support groups, if it's okay.
Yeah.
How many times can people attend support groups per week?
They can attend as many as they want.
Spoiler, I know your story. Can you tell everybody how often how often you went to support groups?
Me?
Yeah, didn't you go often? Didn't you go every day?
I went every day. Some days there was twice a day.
Yes.
didn't you have like a punch card and you like, I don't know, earned a free latte or something, right? Like,
Well, after you attend 3 groups, then you're able to attend the returning attendees group, which
That's cool.
is nice because then you get to
wait, that's a real thing?
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
not the punch card, but you
Stop.
just have to go
Oh.
through. That's just the requirement because the returning attendees group doesn't go over the PSI psychoeducation of like the symptoms and all the disorders. So you need to hear it at least 3 times before you can come to that returning attendees group. I was still attending the regular groups with the psychoeducation. And it's kind of interesting because like I would still hear things that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about that. Because each facilitator explained the information a little bit differently. And so when I would hear things, I'm like, oh, that, that relates to me. Or, oh, that's what that other person meant when they talked about this. Okay, I get it now. It's helpful to hear the education, but yeah.
Right.
I also think like, let's take out the mental health piece. Like the people who are attending these groups are sleep deprived. They've got tiny humans, probably some of them in their house. Like they have a lot going on. Layer on the mental health. It's hard for messages that are being given, even in the best way for their brain to absorb it, like the right cadence, the right word choice. It's still going to take a couple of times before it sticks. I'm always like, can you repeat that? Generally speaking, in life, I would like most things repeated to me.
Yeah.
Lisette, without any further ado, I think we're ready for the lightning round. Ado.
Okay.
Are you ready for the lightning round?
Let me stretch.
Oh, Lisette's stretching. Let's all stretch.
Okay.
Lightning round.
Yep.
Lightning round stretch.
Stretching my neck too. All right. Let's do
Okay. Lisette.
Let's limber up.
Dun, dun, dun. Is that what you said, Lisette?
No, I just said, let's do this.
Okay. Let's do this. Dun, dun, dun. Lisette, besides this podcast, what is your second favorite podcast?
This is an older one, but it's still really good. The Dropout.
Oh.
And it was about Elizabeth Holmes and the whole Theranos like scandal and all that. And so like I will still listen to it every once in a while because I think it's Rebecca Jarvis is the person who's doing the podcast. She's the host.
Okay.
And I really like her stuff. And so yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Like true crime?
Not so much true crime. It's more just like specifically about Elizabeth Holmes. That podcast is specifically about her and her story. Yeah. But I do like true crime podcasts.
Oh, okay.
Sometimes I feel like though that I need to like see it in front of me. I would prefer true crime shows.
Netflix series or something.
Yes, for sure.
That is sometimes my jam, but it's a like really specific. I like the true crime where the woman puts on makeup while she tells the true crimes. I like that one.
Oh,
that's my jam. Like true crime light.
Yeah, I think her name is like Bailey Sarah something.
Or yes, I think so.
Yeah. I watched that one too.
Are you binge watching or reading anything really good per my earlier conversation about needing to update my library book borrowing? It's why we had to pause before starting the podcast. Just so we're clear. We couldn't start the podcast until I fixed my library queue, okay?
Emily said to me, this is silly. Okay. Well, we've already started the story. Sorry, Lisette. We have to pause the lightning round for a second. Before we let Lisette in the podcast studio, Emily said, what did you say? I
need to fix this loan.
And I thought, oh no. She's like got some banking like crisis going on. So Lisette's in the waiting room for an extra 3 minutes. And then she starts talking about, well, I'm not ready to read All the Light We Cannot See Yet. It wasn't supposed to be here for months. And I was like, are you kidding me? You're on Libby right now? And she was like, and I was like, I'm letting Lisette in. We're podcasting. What are you doing? Anyway, Lisette, reading anything?
Okay.
What should I add to my Libby queue?
I think it's called Green Light by Matthew McConaughey. So I had been listening to that audiobook. He is hilarious.
Oh, yeah.
But his stories are so good, like about his childhood and just like certain things. So that is definitely a good read or listen. For me,
Oh,
it's been
yeah, for audiobook. Yeah, great
yes.
voice.
And then for watching TV, so, like, first off, I love reality TV trash,
Oh,
like Real
yeah.
Housewives and all that stuff.
Oh,
Any Bravo show, really.
okay.
But lately on Netflix, I've been watching the Love is Blind
Oh,
show, and everybody's been talking about it, so I was just like, "I'm just gonna see it, like, this is so dumb." So, like, I
like
really didn't
what
understand the
season?
concept. Well, I started with season 6, and now I'm up to
Okay.
season 4.
Okay.
So I went backwards.
I
Oh,
was like,
okay.
that's a weird order, but I'm not going to judge.
I was like, did I forget how to count? How is the okay? All right. Started with season 6.
Yes,
Unconventional. I like it.
yes. Well, because
Nice.
everybody was like, "You can just kinda" like, they're all independent seasons, so you can
Oh,
just pick
okay.
up any season and watch it from there, but I was like, "Let
Okay.
me just see season 6 now." So I watched
Mhm.
that, finished it, and then went back to 1 and went through 3, like, binge watched 1, 2, 3.
Do you have a favorite season?
I would say season 5 and 6 a little bit, because 'cause I've seen some stuff of season 5, but yeah, 6 is, the funniest because there was, like, a lot of, like, social media stuff out there making fun of certain relationships.
Okay.
But yeah, so that's why it was, like,
It
enter
brings you joy.
yeah, and that's why, like, Chris, my husband, who you guys actually interviewed on this podcast,
We
We
sure did.
we know Chris.
they're
We
Okay.
like
go
he
way
was like,
back.
"Why are you watching this?" And I'm like, "'Cause their lives being so messy and ridiculous makes me feel more, like, happy that my life is"
Like, I have my stuff together.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Ta-da!
Exactly.
Yes.
And that's why I love, like, that trash reality TV because it's just like,
Yeah.
I feel better about myself because 'cause I'm like,
Yeah.
the laundry's sitting there, it's done, but I just haven't folded for, like, a week,
Mhm.
and that's okay because these people don't know if they're in love or not, you know? It's all about
But our laundry's clean, and I
yeah,
feel
right.
good about it. Lisette, what is your best parenting hack?
Ooh.
Ooh.
Okay,
Mhm.
I'll share one that I saw, but I wasn't
Oh.
officially, like, told it. So, in a PSI support group, we had our cameras on, and we were just taking care of our kids and, talking about the feels, and one person was changing their child, and so I saw that she put the fresh new diaper underneath the
Mhm.
butt of the child with an old diaper on right now, took it off, removed it really fast, and I was like, "Oh my god, that's so genius." Especially for, like, a poopy diaper because you can use
Uh-huh.
it to wipe down first and then fold under so that
Uh-huh.
their butt's not all messy on the new clean, fresh diaper. It's still on the old diaper, if that makes sense.
Oh.
I don't think I'm giving this visual very well, but I hope it makes sense, like, basically putting a fresh diaper under before you change.
Mhm.
Yeah, like,
And
Mhm.
then going,
yes, and then they're
yeah.
clean, yeah. So that to me, I was like, "Oh my gosh, that is genius." So, like
I didn't see that until after my kids were out of diapers. That was the first time I saw someone do that, and I was like, "Where was that when I needed it?"
yes. And then another hack that I
Ooh, I like
love
hacks.
is so you know how everybody I don't even know if it's a hack, but you know how, like, everybody on social media does, like, all of these cute, like, sensory bins and, like, different activities, and Montessori is such,
Oh,
like, a
yeah.
big thing, and I was just like, "You know what? Imma throw some beans, some rice in a Tupperware, hide some toys underneath, and
Oh,
it's a
yeah.
sensory bin." It's a genius hack,
Yes.
and it's with stuff that, like, I have in the home. Or I will wash produce or, like, fruit. For example, I think it was blueberries that we were, like, washing
Mhm.
recently, and I'll throw some toys in there too, and you gotta scoop them out, rescue your toys,
Oh.
things like that, because I'm in those stages
Mhm.
of, like, the toddler learning,
Mhm.
and all that, so
Yeah.
those are my hacks.
I had an underbed storage container filled with rice,
Ooh, nice.
and I, like, would tuck it under the couch
Yeah.
and then, like, bring it out when I needed a break, crack the
Yeah.
lid. And then I was vacuuming rice for, like, an hour after they went to bed. Totally worth it, though.
Especially, like, if you don't
Yeah.
wanna do sand. Some kids have, like, sensory with
Mhm.
sand or even with other things, so, like, it was an extra different
Totally.
option.
Yeah. If it ends up in their mouth, it's okay. Coincidentally, they weren't hungry for a while. I don't know.
What is one thing that today you wishes that you could go back in time, like hop in a little time machine, do, and say to pre-recovery you?
Oh, that one's hard. So many things.
It's like a message of love. Like write yourself a love letter. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I would say when I was going through the feeding challenges, I wish I could go back in time and tell, mental health sad Lisette that there's no right or wrong way. Breastfeeding and bottle
Yeah.
feeding and formula feeding, it's not all or nothing. If you want to do a little bit of this here and a little bit of that, that's okay. Or if you want to just go all the way with formula, that's okay too. It's not easy. And so I wish I really could extend that compassion to myself when I was going through that and just being like, there's no right or wrong way to feed your baby. Like one of our longtime facilitators, Christina, always says, however you feed your baby, you're a champion of the world. And I wish I could say that to younger women.
Oh,
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Lisette, that's some radical self-love. I'm curious, what is one way that you will show yourself a little bit of radical love today? And radical could mean anything. I just like to say radical.
I feel like y'all are so funny that you'll get this and you won't be like, mm. But every time I hear this question on your podcast, because I do listen to all the episodes, and I always think, I'm like, how does nobody say anything inappropriate innuendo when it comes to radical love?
Oh,
I mean,
okay.
No.
This is the podcast after dark. Just kidding.
stop it. It's not.
This is not.
guys.
It's not.
No.
I'm kidding.
So that's why, every time I heard that question, I'm like, wait, they're not talking about that, right? Because everyone's answer is very I'm going to take care of myself with this and that. And I'm like, well, technically that is way to take care of yourself. Yes. But that's not what I'm going to do. But I just thought I wanted to
But
point
I
that
would
out.
never say that.
Nope.
Okay.
Wink, wink, yeah. No, but I thought y'all would get a kick out of that for me saying that.
Yeah.
That's what I thought the question meant. That I was like, oh, wait a second. No one says anything.
Is this like another meaning of radical that I am too old to know? I don't understand.
I don't know. Or maybe just I have a mind in the gutter. So that could be it
Okay.
too.
No,
We're going to go with that.
it's fine.
The two of you.
Emily's
Not
like,
me.
I'm out of this. Did you just do an angel?
Oh, I did. I put a little halo on myself.
Sure. No, I think the way I'm going to show myself some radical love is I am going to probably put on a really good podcast while I'm doing some work, or even take a real lunch break.
Oh.
Hour where I'm not staring at the screen. Either watch something or listen to a podcast that I've been wanting to.
Honestly, taking a real lunch, that's pretty revolutionary.
Yes,
Yeah.
right.
Like with a plate and sitting at a table and everything.
Yeah, not at my desk.
Wow.
No, not
With a plate at a table?
Yeah.
Real silverware.
Whoa.
I work from home and everything's in Tupperware, okay?
Emily, there's one more very important question that you like to ask people. Lisette, she probably knows what it is.
I need to know how you take your water. Bubbles, no bubbles, flavor, no flavor. Are you a liquid IV person? Sponsor us.
Well, I take my water plain in a giant jug with a little time reminder. Wait, hold on. That's not the time reminder. Sorry. This is the little time reminder that tells you how much water you need to drink.
Lisette, you're ahead of the game. It's 12:40 on the West Coast right now. You're already at 3 p.m., aren't you?
I am.
Nailing it.
I am. But I think I cheated because I didn't fill it up all the way.
Oh.
Nobody needs to know.
No, nobody needs to know.
But I do
Nobody's
take it
ever gonna know.
Just because I don't know.
Are you good about drinking water?
I am. Yeah. For the most part,
That's awesome.
I am.
I want to be like you when I grow up.
Kind of have to
Me
be
too.
because I get migraines. So it's I have to make sure I'm hydrated so that I don't get a migraine, like a dehydration headache. So.
Yeah. That's also some really great self-care. That's radical.
Yes. Radical.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Totally.
Y'all can edit out that part if you want. Just so you know.
What?
The after dark part.
Oh. Are you kidding? That's totally going to be a Friday Funny.
We can, though, if you want us to. We don't have to.
No. I'm cool with that. That's why I said it.
Well, Lisette, if anybody listening, might want to get a hold of you or ask you a question or reach out about support groups or things like that, how can they do that?
Sure. So I'll give my Venmo. Just kidding.
That's great.
I'm just kidding.
I like that.
So I have an Instagram page where I share my life. I don't always do it so much now just because I'm busier. My Instagram account, you can find me at PMAD, PMAD, Latina, Latina, Warrior, WARRIOR. You can find me on the PSI website, or they can, email the support groups team and I'll get the email.
Lisette, this has been lovely. I want to know, are you going to play video games online with me if I play with your husband online? Can we do that? Is that going to be a thing? Or are you not a gamer?
I'm not much of a gamer. But I do like watching him play, if that makes sense. So when he's playing, because then I just rip him a new one every time he's playing.
Oh, dang!
There's been with his friends, he'll play video games, and then I'm just making fun of them the whole time, and he's recorded me, and he's like, "You guys have to hear her commentary."
You're Mystery Science Theatering his video gaming. That's great. I want to be there for that. I want to be there for all the things, Lisette. Thank you so much for sharing your story, for getting on your soapboxes. We were happy to help you up there and then applaud while you spoke about important things. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Emily and Danny. This was great. And yeah, just reach out if you need help. Everyone who's out there, if you need help, reach out.
Yeah. Thanks for tuning in to the I Am One podcast. Check out today's show notes where we'll drop links to all the important things that we mentioned in this episode. Please consider sharing about I Am One on social media and following and rating our show wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. It only takes a minute of your time and, well, that'll help our collective mission of bringing resources and local support to folks worldwide. From everyone here at PSI, thanks again for listening.